Dharma Vishnu Bhad Paramahamsa Pariva Acharya Sotar Sita Srishimad His Divine Loving Grace of Acharya Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Dharma Vishnu Bhad Paramahamsa Pariva Acharya Sotar Sita Srishimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Prem Se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivedanta Ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopal Gopal Giriraj Govardhan Ki, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki, Shri Mayapur Dham Ki, Puri Dham Ki, Ganga Maya Ki, Yamuna Maya Ki, Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani Ki, Harinam Sankirtan Ki, Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki, Grantarashram and Bhagavatam Ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande, all glories to the assembled devotees. Hare. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Gauranga, Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatamurandasya Ginanjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurue Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Didati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Udapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopaka Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Visubhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namaste Giri Rajaya Shri Govardhana Namane Shesha Kleshana Shaya Parmananda Daine Vancha Kalpatarabhyascha Kripasindhivyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mare ka bando mat sangin mad guro man madana mad nistaraka mad bhagya mad ananda namostate asadu sadu tadaya nati nicho chatakara hanamuncha kadachimnam premnorit katayos puraha Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 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 Narayana Namaskritam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devyam Saraswatim Vyasam Tatojayam Mudiraye Nastapure Shubhadreshi Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Utamashloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 30, Activities of the Prachetas, Text 37. Told Krishna, I said, I feel you're taking my voice. Please don't take it till the George Harrison concert. Right after the George Harrison concert, just so Krishna did the deal. 37. Tesham vicharatam bhagyam Tirtanam pavane chaya Vitasya kim naro cheta Tavakanam samagamaha Tesham vicharatam bhagyam Tirtanam pavane chaya Vitasya kim naro cheta Tavakanam samagamaha Tesham Tesham vicharatam padyam Tirtanam pavane chaya Vitasya kim narocheta Tavakanam samagamaha Tesham vicharatam padyam Tirtanam pavane chaya
Vitasya kim narocheta Tavakanam samagamaha Tesham vicharatam padyam
Vicharatam padyam
Kirtanam pavane chaya
Tirtanam pavane chaya
Vitasya kim narocheta
Vitasya kim narocheta
Tavakanam samagamaha
Tavakanam samagamaha Esham vicharatam padyam Kirtanam pavane chaya Vitasya kim narocheta Tavakanam samagama
Tesham vicharatam padyam
Tesham vicharatam padyam
Kirtanam
Kirtanam pavane chaya
Rocheta
Vitasya kim narocheta Tavakanam samagama Tesham vicharatam padyam Kirtanam pavane chaya Vitasya kim narocheta Tavakanam samagama Word for word. Tesham, of them. Vicharatam, who travel. Padbyam, by their feet. Tirtanam, the holy places. Pavana Ichaya, with the desire to purify. Vitasya, to the materialistic person who is always fearful. Kim, why? Na, not. Rocheta, becomes pleasing. Tavakanam, of your devotees. Samagamaha, meeting. Translation. Dear Lord, your personal associates, devotees, wander all over the world to purify even the holy places of pilgrimage. Is not such an activity pleasing to those who are actually afraid of material existence? Please repeat. Dear Lord, your personal associates, devotees, wander all over the world to purify even the holy places of pilgrimage. Is not such an activity pleasing to those who are actually afraid of material existence? Purport. There are two kinds of devotees. One is called Goshtyanandi and the other is called Bhajananandi. The Bhajananandi refers to the devotee who does not move but remains in one place. Such a devotee is always engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. He chants the Maha Mantra as taught by many acharyas and sometimes goes out for preaching work. The Goshtyanandi is one who desires to increase the number of devotees all over the world. He travels all over the world just to purify the world and the people residing in it. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised, Priti viteyachi yata nagaradi grama sarvatra pachara harbe moranama. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted his followers to move all over the world to preach in every town and village. In the Chaitanya Sampradaya, those who strictly follow the principles of Lord Chaitanya must travel all over the world to preach the message of Lord Chaitanya, which is the same as preaching the words of Krishna, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. The more the devotees preach the principles of Krishna Katha, the more people throughout the world will benefit. Devotees like the great sage Narada
who travel all over to preach are called Goshtianandi. Narada Muni is always wandering throughout the universe just to create different types of devotees. Narada even made a hunter a devotee. He also made Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad devotees. Actually, all devotees are indebted to the great sage Narada, for he has wandered both in heaven and in hell. A devotee of the Lord is not even afraid of hell. He goes to preach the glories of the Lord everywhere, even in hell, because there is no distinction between heaven and hell for a devotee. Narayana parasarve na kutashchana bibyati swarga pavarga narikashvapi tulyartha darshinaha. A pure devotee of Narayan is never afraid of going anywhere and everywhere. For him, heaven and hell are one and the same. Such devotees, wandering all over the world, deliver those who are actually afraid of this material existence. Some people are already disgusted with material existence, being confused and frustrated by material enjoyment. And some people who are intelligent are interested in understanding the Supreme Lord. Both may take advantage of the pure devotee who wanders throughout the world. When a pure devotee goes to a place of pilgrimage, he desires to purify that holy place of pilgrimage. Many sinful men bathe in the holy waters of the places of pilgrimage. They take their baths in the waters of the Ganges and Yamuna, at places such as Prayag, Vrindavan, and Mathura. In this way, the sinful men are purified, but their sinful actions and reactions remain at the holy places of pilgrimage. When a devotee comes to take bath at those places of pilgrimage, the sinful reactions left by sinful men are neutralized by the devotee. Tirti kurvanti tirtani swanta stena gadabrita. Because the devotee always carries the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his heart, wherever he goes, it becomes a place of pilgrimage, a holy place for understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is therefore the duty of everyone to associate with a pure devotee, who thus attain freedom from material contamination. Everyone should take advantage of the wandering devotees whose only business is to deliver conditioned souls from the clutches of Maya. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale. Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Prachade Nirvishesha Shanivadi Pasudade Shatare Namaste Jivananda Dasa Yavanacharane Prabhupada Balabhaya Srinivasi Ravanu Agyana Honda Ramana. So this is very nice here. We're hearing about the glories of pure devotees, these previous verses, and the importance in how we should take advantage of pure devotees. So it's kind of a theme. Recently, we've had a lot of wonderful visitors visit our temple, starting with Padmanayan Prabhu came, and then Ashram Swami came, and then Hari Lila Prabhu came, Acharya Ratna Prabhu came. So there's many wonderful devotees that are visiting. We should always take advantage of them when they come, because their business is to travel and spread the glories of the Lord. So we can always take advantage and hear those glories when a sadhu comes through, because they're the genuine followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prabhupada says in this purport that those who are following Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu must travel and preach, or must assist those, in a sense, who are doing so. We're all assisting Prabhupada, who of course is traveling and preaching. Because such a traveling preacher or a preacher of Krishna consciousness, they give mercy to all. They're the most kind-hearted individuals, like the gopis say in the Tavakatamritam Tapta Jivanam verse, that those who are distributing the messages of Krishna are the most munificent, they're the most magnanimous souls. Prabhupada was speaking about the different qualities of Vaishnava. One of them is kindness. And so sometimes kindness is misunderstood. Prabhupada said, what is real kindness? And Prabhupada said, this sannyas is real kindness. Prabhupada said, this sannyas is real kindness. Because this sannyas means such sacrifice to spread the glories of the Lord to others. So we can interpret from that real kindness means to preach Krishna consciousness. And if we're not preaching Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada defines that as violence. To have knowledge and to not spread it is considered violence. So real kindness means to go on books, to preach, to speak to people, to give people prasadam, to assist those who are doing so. This is real kindness. And there's so many sacrifices that go in there and go into that. So this Goshtianandi versus Vaishnavanandi. Vaishnavanandi is a devotee who is sitting and chanting Hare Krishna, and Goshtianandi is a devotee who is preaching. And our movement is a Goshtianandi movement. movement of going out and trying to give mercy to others. Because that's how you get the mercy, ultimately. The more we preach, the more we make sacrifice to help others come to Krishna, help others come to that knowledge, we'll get so much more mercy. That's a beautiful way to be. Just a beautiful way to be. So this verse is mentioned here about how the pure devotees purify even the places of pilgrimage. And so there's a story in this connection of Vidura, who's such a devotee who was traveling and preaching. I thought we can hear a little of that. It's very beautiful. So Vidura is a major character of the Srimad Bhagavatam. He's one of the very important figures in Srimad Bhagavatam, because so much of the Bhagavatam is dealing with Vidura, basically from the 3rd canto all the way to the end of the 5th canto. You're hearing Vidura speaking with Maitreya Muni. And so this is a big section, and this is all came about because Vidura came across Uddhava. Uddhava is, of course, one of the greatest devotees of Krishna. And Uddhava met Vidura, and Vidura began to inquire. But Uddhava, being very much aware of Vaishnava etiquette, did not want to commit the offense of Marya Vyada Vyatikrama. Who here's heard that word? Marya Vyadi Vyatikrama. So what does it mean, Gauranga?
Like speaking over assumed personality.
Yeah. So he didn't want to commit the offense of Marya Vyada Vyatikrama. So he recommended that Maitreya Muni, that Vidura go speak with Maitreya Muni and hear Bhagavatam from him. However, of course, Uddhava was much more elevated in Krishna consciousness than Maitreya Muni. But he was following etiquette. But there's no question of Uddhava being less elevated than Maitreya Muni. Uddhava was far, far above. In fact, Maitreya Muni was not a pure devotee of the Lord at the time of the meeting between Maitreya Muni and Uddhava. Because Uddhava met with the Lord at Prabhas, and the Lord was about to leave this planet. And Uddhava, he was in great grief because he couldn't stand to be separated from the Lord. So actually the Lord told Uddhava to go to Badrikashram, but Uddhava once again came to speak with the Lord at Prabhas. And so at Prabhas, Lord Krishna spoke to Uddhava some instructions, and it just so happened, of course, by Krishna's arrangement, that Maitreya Muni was there listening to this conversation. And it's described that the Lord looked at Uddhava and was speaking with Uddhava, but he was kind of ignoring Maitreya because Maitreya had a tinge of jnana, but Uddhava was a pure devotee. But by hearing this conversation between Uddhava and the Lord, Maitreya became purified and became a pure devotee. So Maitreya Muni is a contemporary of Vyas. He's actually also a disciple of Parashara Muni. I think, actually I have to check that. He's related, he's a contemporary of Vyas. There's one other guru there. But so I want to tell about Vidura to some degree, what I can. So Vidura, of course, is the brother of Dhritarashtra and King Pandu. But Vidura was born of a maidservant, so he's called Dasi Putra. He was born of a maidservant rather than born of the queen. So therefore, Vidura wasn't qualified or to be king. But Vidura was a very pure devotee of the Lord, and he was endowed with a lot of wisdom, because Vidura, of course, is an incarnation of Yamaraj. It is described that there was one great sage who, as a child, was torturing ants, as sometimes children do. And he was sticking ants with his toothpick. He was impaling these ants. And so at a certain point in his life, the police or the Kshatriyas, they were chasing a criminal, a killer, and that killer happened to try to take shelter in the ashram of this great sage. And that killer, when he came into the ashram, the police force found him, and then they arrested him, and they also arrested Vidura. this sage. And so this sage, he was brought to trial, and they sentenced the man who was the killer to be killed by being stabbed. That was the way he was to be executed, by being stabbed. And so they were also going to sentence the sage to that, and the sage was like, I didn't do it, what is this crazy? And so at the very last minute, they said, okay, you're free to go. But he was very angry that this happened to him, so he went and consulted Yamaraj. He said, why did I have to go through this fear of being, impaled? And Yamaraj said, well, when you were a little kid, you were, impaling ants. And this is why you had to go through that. The sage became angry. He said, I was a little boy. How can I be, convicted of something I did as a little boy? Therefore I curse you to become a Sudra. He was cursed to become a Sudra, and as a Sudra, he came and became Vidura. And while Yamaraj was out, Aryama was taking over the position of Yamaraj and dealing with all the things he had to deal with. So Yamaraj came for a short stint as Vidura, and we understand that Yamaraj is one of the 12 Mahajans. He's a very great, powerful, and devoted devotee of Krishna. So there are so many things that were happening during the Mahabharata, but Vidura was always looking out for his nephews, the Pandavas. He was always looking out for their welfare. And so Vidura, he saved them for the house of lack. Because Dhritarashtra, of course, built this house of lack for the Pandavas, and the Pandavas came to stay in that house, and Vidura warned them that this house is a trap. You're going to be killed. And so, of course, Dhritarashtra wanted to burn down the house, and they were saved. And there were so many things that were leading up to this kind of terrible event of the Mahabharata war, this burning the house of lack, and then the insulting of Draupadi. Very, very insulting. And of course, Dhritarashtra cheated the Pandavas. He cheated the Pandavas both in the dice match and in terms of giving them the kingdom or the villages or the share of their kingdom they deserve. So they were cheated in so many ways. And most importantly, the biggest offense of Dhritarashtra was that he was disregarding Krishna. And that is called Chatta Punyalesha. He didn't have an ounce of piety left because he didn't hear the nectarian words of the Lord. And so both Dhritarashtra and his son Duryodhana, they were disregarding Krishna. And this created a very bad situation. And so Vidura, because he's such a saintly person, and saintly people are like that, like we hear of Sanatana Goswami. Sanatana Goswami would speak with all the people, all the rough people, all the low people, all the high people also. And sometimes the people, they would come to Sanatana Goswami and they would ask about, who should I get my daughter married to? And, I'm having some struggles with my wife. And although Sanatana Goswami is on the highest possible platform of Krishna consciousness, he was so kind that he was giving instruction to all of these regular people, and they were getting benefit from that. We hear this famous verse, Shru Shro Shardaranasya Vasudeva Kataruchihi Syan Mahat Sevya Vipra Punyatirtha Nishevana, that just by hearing from these great souls, Mahat Sevam, one develops a taste to hear about Krishna. So in this way, Sanatana Goswami became very dear to everybody in Vrindavan. So Vidura was also a very saintly devotee of the Lord, and everybody was very dear to him. Even Dhritarashtra loved Vidura very much. His brother, he loved him very much. And so Dhritarashtra often consulted Vidura about various matters in terms of government, in terms of personal affairs. So Dhritarashtra called Vidura for consulting him. And Vidura's advice was, you need to return their legitimate share of land and of the kingdom to the Pandavas, because the Pandavas have tolerated your offenses. But he warned him, he said, but this Bhima, he said, he's very snake-like. He's breathing like a snake in anger. And so I warn you and I urge you to please return the kingdom to the Pandavas because you're in danger. And he said, he made this point that Lord Krishna is on the side of the Pandavas. There's really no hope for us. Krishna is on the Pandavas' side. Krishna is friends with the Pandavas. So unless you serve the Pandavas, unless you do the right thing here, we're going to be destroyed because Krishna is on the side of the Pandavas. And so it's described by our acharyas that Dhritarashtra may argue, but even if I did listen to your advice, even if I were to give this kingdom back to the Pandavas, Duryodhana would oppose me. And so this is that attachment, right? He's very much attached to his son Duryodhana. And that was Dhritarashtra's big fault in life, was that he was so attached to his son Duryodhana. And Vidura said some very heavy words about Duryodhana. He said, he's offense personified, he called him. He said, you are offense personified. Duryodhana is offense personified, and he's envious of Krishna. Purusha dvid Krishna vimuko. And he is the cause of all inauspiciousness. So he explained that. You're supporting offense personified, a person who's envious of Lord Krishna and who is all inauspicious. So in this way, Vidura warned him, but it just so happened that at that moment, Duryodhana happened to hear these words of Vidura. Vidura was advising his brother Dhritarashtra, and Duryodhana heard this. And so Duryodhana was very swollen, very angry, and his lips were trembling, and he was feeling, embarrassed. And so he immediately insulted Vidura. He said, why is this Dasi Putra, this filthy son of a maidservant, this Sudra speaking to you? And so he said some very insulting words toward Vidura. And because this is a family of Kshatriyas, and so there was, even though actually Vidura is the son of Vyas, there was this intense pain felt by Vidura. This was a very insulting word. So it's described that, the insult of a family is sometimes worse than death. And so, struck by those sharp words and placing his bow at the door, Vidura left his brother's palace without being sorry, considering the acts of the Lord to be the Lord's Maya. And this is interesting because Vidura had this consciousness, our acharyas described. Vidura had a consciousness where he was able to see that the Lord's internal potency is working on me, because he's removing me from this entanglement in this kind of degraded family, in this serious situation that's going on. But the Lord's Maya is also working on Duryodhana. He says, the Yoga Maya is working on me to bring me closer to Krishna, and the Maha Maya is working on Duryodhana to bring him to his destruction. So that's the way that a devotee sees that the very same circumstance for a non-devotee is Maha Maya, and it's bringing him toward death. And that very other circumstance, which is Yoga Maya, is bringing him toward life, toward Krishna. So Vidura was, of course, he was friends with Krishna, and he was associates with Krishna. He was very close with Krishna, but Vidura felt that he was contaminated. Having been associated with Duryodhana, he felt that he was not worthy to associate with the Lord. And so he decided that he was going to go on pilgrimage. So Vidura went on to pilgrimage, and he traveled to various holy places, and he went and saw very many deities, and he was doing all the things that we do on pilgrimage. And he was an ideal pilgrim. He traveled alone, thinking only of Krishna. And he went through cities, orchards, villages, and he was going to see deities. And so then in this pastime, we hear a point made about how someone should be when they go on pilgrimage, when they go to Mayapur. When people go to Mayapur and they go with the wrong consciousness, then they don't have a nice experience. So there's a certain etiquette to go on pilgrimage. One of them is Medya, that means pure. Independent in occupation, Vivikta Vritti. Sada Pluto, always sanctified. Adasyano, austere, he was only sleeping on the earth. Avaduto Vesho, he was dressed like a mendicant. So sometimes people go to Mayapur and they don't want to dress like a devotee. Actually, Mayapur is the place you should always dress like a devotee. That's my opinion. Because this is a place, it helps us increase that sacred energy. Alakshita, he was alone. He was unseen by relatives. He performed vows. And he was doing this haritoshini. He was doing it only to please the Lord. So in this way, Vidura went on a very sacred pilgrimage. And thus he reached Prabhas at that time. When he came to Prabhas, that's where he came in contact with Uddhava, and we're hearing now how he heard the Bhagavatam. And then after being enlightened by the Bhagavatam, he went to enlighten his brother. So Vidura, he became so purified by this association of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. And so this verse that we heard spoken in the purport about pure devotees can even sanctify the places of pilgrimage, this verse was spoken in regards to Vidura. So Vidura is a very wonderful and powerful devotee. And because of that pilgrimage, because of that association and that desire to go on pilgrimage and to become purified, he was able to purify his brother Dhritarashtra, and he delivered Dhritarashtra by being very heavy with him. He spoke very heavy words. He said that you are full of mucus, you're just an old man, you're like a dog, living off those who you tried to kill. So he chastised his brother in that way, and his brother heard those words, and Dhritarashtra left and went into the forest to become self-realized. So we have to preach, we have to travel, we have to do what we can to take part in the movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Somehow or another we want to associate with the preaching. If a temple is not preaching, if a temple is not doing something to serve Krishna in that way, then the temple becomes dead. So we may not be giving classes, we may not be distributing books, but we have to associate and help that goal. What is our goal? Because Krishna's gonna respond to our desire. And so Prabhupada explains purity is the force, purity and desire. So what do we desire to do in terms of service? We have to have that desire to make devotees to spread Krishna consciousness. And by having that desire to spread Krishna consciousness and the purity of life to do it, then Krishna will send us devotees and we can become successful. And Tucson is very successful actually in preaching. Many may not know that. Many people don't know about Tucson, but those who do, including our friend Balaram Das, he travels all over America now preparing for sannyas, and he says actually Tucson is the best place for Western preaching. He said Tucson is the best place, and he actually said, he wanted to interview my Gurudev because he said, in Tucson I see that there are actually devotees initiated 10 years ago who still chant Hare Krishna, still serve at the temple, still come to the temple, still preach. He said this is practically unheard of in other places for Westerners. And so, I mean, I'm sure it's happening, but it's very successful. And my Guru Maharaj didn't actually want to do the interview with him because he said, it's not me, I don't know what I'm doing. But he said, he told Balaram that he should ask all of us and, maybe we can explain what we think of what he's doing. He said, I don't want to, just talk about myself. And so, the conclusion I was able to say is that, we have a desire to preach. We have a desire to actually spread Krishna consciousness, and that desire pervades the whole mission. When you have a mission, when your mission is to spread Krishna consciousness, then Krishna will fulfill that desire because it's a desire in his service. So we should be very clear that this movement is a preaching movement, that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wants us to spread Krishna consciousness, and that when we do things, we think in such a way as how is this going to affect the new people coming to the temple? How is this going to affect their perception of us? How is this going to affect so many things that are going to lead to them being a devotee? So when we think like that, when that becomes our goal, automatically everything else follows. The intelligence is given to fulfill that goal. So in any case, Srila Prabhupada, he is the greatest example of this Goshti Anandi, traveling and preaching and following the footsteps of Narada Muni. And so we may not be able to do what Prabhupada did, but we can at least do something. Bhadrinarayan Swami, when he was here last time, he had a nice relationship over the years. And so he said, you're a nice brahmachari, you're really, good, I really appreciate you. And he said, never stop preaching. He said, if you get married, if you take sannyas, he said, in any case, if you don't preach, you're dead. He said, but if you preach, no matter what position you are, you'll be alive and you'll be happy. So, and I've experienced that in my life, that trying to share Krishna consciousness is the real happiness and pleasure and joy that I feel on a regular basis. And if we have this kind of consciousness where preaching and spreading Krishna consciousness is our goal, it changes our interactions. Because what is the goal of an interaction with someone? Whenever you meet someone, the goal should be to help them come closer to Krishna. And when that also goes along with our own devotee relationships, when we have a devotee relationship, if our goal is to be entertained, if our goal is to be, to have this person just be my friend, then in that sense, to that degree, it's materialistic. Sometimes we see that, and I think about the children a lot. It's the point that I've been trying to make here at the temple. We have nice devotee kids here, and it's easy to like, oh, they're cute or they're funny, or even the teenage ones, we joke with them. But in that way, we kind of keep them trapped on one level instead of being a person who they should see as, oh, this person is respectable and is a Vaishnava. And, when they come to speak with you, they shouldn't feel that you're, just this funny figure they can mess with. They should feel, this is a person who has some spiritual wisdom, and you should treat them in such a way that you're trying to elevate them in their consciousness, not keep them where they are. They can save the fun and games and that. I mean, not little kids, but especially teenagers. They can save the fun and games for their friends at school. But if they're going to speak with someone who is practicing Krishna consciousness, a brahmachari, or someone who has some position, it should be in an interaction that is trying to elevate them in their consciousness, trying to make them inspired, trying to give them self-esteem. And so otherwise, that interaction becomes sense gratification. And that applies for all people, but I think it especially applies for young people. When we interact with young people, especially devotee young people, like young devotees or people born in the movement, and the tendency is to, when we saw them when they were little kids, and we may goof with them, but that doesn't really help them in any way. In fact, it reinforces the Maya that they're already living at in the school, in the system. So if we can interact with them in a way that elevates them, I think that's a much more positive consciousness. So the goal of every interaction we have should be to elevate that person, or to serve Krishna. And in that way also we become peaceful, we become happy, and the interactions in the whole temple becomes happy. But when we think, oh, this is just, let me just play around, let me just goof around, and we can even make the show of that look how blissful I am. I'm just goofing around. I'm not serious. I have no responsibility. We can make a show of that, but that's still not elevating someone. It's not showing deep compassion. So we should be very grave, as Vaishnavas means grave. Not that we shouldn't have fun interactions, but there is an element of gravity that needs to be acted upon. And that'll increase our own Krishna consciousness. That'll increase the Krishna consciousness of those around us. So that's really all I have to share today. It's a long night of preaching last night, so I'm a little tired today, so please forgive me. Any questions? No? Yes.
Let me know what you think, why Tucson is such a great preaching field. Is it because of the college here?
Not because of the
University?
college, because I mean, we don't have very many devotees from the college here.
Oh.
Where's the college? We have a lot of young devotees, but none of them are from the college, but one, just Gauranga Prema. Besides that, none of them are from the college.
Just because this temple is so sweet and organized and open.
I genuinely think it's because there's a desire to do it. I mean, I genuinely think that there's a desire to do it, and we have, Mother Sundamani on one side of things is keeping everything very nice, and she's thinking she's thinking in terms of what looks nice for Westerners, what appears nice for Westerners, and for preaching. And then on the other side of things, you have Jivananda Prabhu, who's very dedicated and determined to preach and empowering young people, which is the main element, I think, is that when people come, they see that young people are giving classes, young people are leading kirtans, young people are doing things in Krishna consciousness, young people are becoming monks and actually living a genuine spiritual life. And that was my literal first impression of when I walked into the temple, this temple, the very first time. I first went to the Phoenix temple, and I had a very kind of weird experience. And not that it was, bad. It wasn't, no one talked to me. And then I was kind of it was very strange.
Not inspired.
Yeah. And the class that was given there was kind of, it was a very like non-preaching topic, but it was very good for, the Indian community there. But it wasn't something that I was resonating with very deeply. And so then when I came to the Tucson temple, the first thing I saw when I walked in was that Chaitanya Leela, she was leading kirtan. Now that was interesting because me and Chaitanya Leela are about one year apart. She's 1 year older than me. And I was thinking, at that time I was just turned 21. So she was 22 years old. So I was thinking, this is, a young person leading kirtan. And I just was intrigued by that, and it doesn't look like an Indian. And that was just something that struck me, like this is happening. I was thinking this is something that's actually happening. This is a real thing. And it's not something I feel so disconnected from. And then she actually, I came, I sat, and I listened to the class. I think Sureshwar Prabhu was giving the class. And Govinda Madhava, Radha Sundari, and Achul Govinda were all gone that night. And they were kind of the preachers at that time, especially Atula. And Jivananda Prabhu was in El Paso at that time too. So I was there. No one really spoke to me, but then even at the end of the program, Chaitanya Leela came up to me and she said, what's your name? Who are you? And I said, I've read these books, and I practice Krishna consciousness in Sedona. And she said, let me introduce you to the temple president. And so she introduced me to Mother Sundamani immediately. And Mother Sundamani spoke with me, and it was really nice. It was a nice interaction, a nice experience. And I think that's a big element, is that people are having nice experiences with devotees. And there's a focus on it. There's an element of we are making focusing to make people devotees. And the biggest thing, I think, another big thing is that there's a family element to this temple.
Right.
And people want to be part of that. They want to feel like, oh wow, these people really love each other. They're a family. Let me be part of this. And so I think that a lot of it comes from Mother Sundamani, because she's a temple president who you can interact with. You can, in a sense, like you have a friendship with. Whereas in a lot of temples, it feels like management is something that you have no, you can't even talk to, not to name any temples, but there are certain temples where it just feels like if you're a devotee there, I know I've heard from brahmacharis who live there and then have left. It's like being like in a machine, they're part of a machine, and they have no connection with like the temple management, and that creates a certain atmosphere that's not as favorable as what we have here.
And out of many, many good qualities of Sundamani, she's able to engage everyone in service.
Yeah, that's a great one too, yeah. Immediately engage people in service. My first service was chopping seitan. Lolita.
And I just wanted to add, you pretty much covered this, but I think
I think a really big factor is that there is Westerners that are doing all these services, right? Because at pretty much every other single temple I've gone to, you don't see that.
Well, in
Right.
San Diego, there are a lot of Westerners.
Well, yeah. But I mean, so when people come and they see, oh, there's someone that's, from the same background that I'm from, they're doing this, then maybe that's something I can also do.
I certainly think that's part of it. But I know there are other temples where there are Westerners doing like in San Diego, it's like there's no Indian brahmacharis there. They're all Western. And also in LA, there's a lot of Westerners, like young Western people, but the focus, it's almost that the temple's so big. I mean, LA, they're both successful. They make Western devotees too. But there's just a different focus because sometimes you have these big programs and there's not enough people to speak, or each devotee has to take up on themselves to like be a preacher. And that's what I think is very successful here, is that we have dedicated devotees who are able to try to spread Krishna consciousness. Because I think that's an element of it though.
And so what can you do if you're just not a very good preacher, like what?
You need to be a good devotee. It's not about being a good preacher. It's about being a good devotee. You set an example, like people see, like, for me, I remember when I was kind of coming, because like the person who kind of originally preached to me in Krishna consciousness, both of them were very intense. Like Govinda Dat was intense. And the other person was telling me all kinds of insane things, really insane things, And so I was kind of like, I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to check it out anyways. And so then, I remember I came to the temple once and I got in the car and I rode with Govinda Madhava. And I was like, oh, like, this is a normal person. That was like a big relief for me. Like, whew, this is a normal person. Like, he's a person that has a wife, got a nice wife, he's got a job. He kind of a cool guy. He doesn't, he's not looking like, monked out. I was thinking like, geez, this is a normal person. Like, this person makes me feel like I can. At that time, I didn't know I was going to be a brahmachari. I had the intention of being a brahmachari, but I felt like I can do this, that you can do this. And then Atula was around and, he was doing realty and like, oh, these are normal people. And so, but they're also really good devotees. And so that being a good devotee on top of being a normal person is an attractive thing. You have to have that group of people who are just good examples. And when someone's a good example, that's the best preaching. And I'm convinced that, if you look at the people who are making devotees, not all of them are the best orators. It's not about your oration. It's about your consciousness. People who know all the shastras and they can quote every shloka, but people are just like, I don't like that guy immediately, or I'm turned off by this. But someone who has that genuine consciousness of humility, kindness, sweetness, they may not be the best orators, but people are becoming devotees left and right because they have the consciousness is being transferred into them. They feel the consciousness. So we may not be a good speaker, but at least we can be a good devotee, and that being a good devotee will transfer. Nothing's worse than, when you go on Harinam and, devotees are like, you guys look real, you're really into what you're doing, And so when you're a devotee, you need to be Krishna conscious enough to be happy and not be totally in Maya. And then people are going to notice. No matter where I go, if I'm dressed like this or wherever I go, people notice, they're like, there's something special about you. And it's not that I'm special, but it's just that I'm a devotee. I'm trying to be a devotee and I got mercy of the devotees. And so that's an opportunity to tell them because they never seen any, they can feel that this person is elevated, this person is happy. That's a big element to it. You had something else?
No, I was just thinking, this temple has everything. Great prasadam, the deities are beautiful. Everybody's very loving and normal, most of us.
Some of us. There's some outliers.
No, relatable,
You had me till normal.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a sweet temple. And
Yeah, it's
it's
special.
known all over the world as just being a very, very sweet temple.
It's special.
And it starts with Sindamani. You know, she's always been a manager, perfect manager,
Yeah.
you know.
Very special, very special. And I mean, I can say that in India, I'm seeing, you know, like the level of preaching going on there is just unbelievable what they're doing. And, you know, especially Radhesham Prabhu is just, he's making thousands of young people devotees, thousands of young people. And, you know, it comes down to, you know, like the way in which we also preach. And I think there's a similarity in that, you know, Radhesham Prabhu's preaching is unique in that many times amongst Indian communities, you go into the Indian community and the class that is given is within the context of that theology. Like, you know, all of a sudden, you know, you're hearing about, you know, this blue boy and all these things. And that's all very nice. But, you know, like the way that my Guru Maharaj gives the class so much of the time, it's basically, how could you leave here tonight in such a way that what I'm going to say is going to help you and inspire you? And so when you have that practical application of Krishna consciousness, it really helps Westerners and it helps everybody. And we just had this devotee, Acharya Ratna Prabhu. He was here. He's an amazing preacher. He travels all over India and makes college students devotees. And, you know, he gives these classes and they basically start out with a class where the class is, you know, overcoming stress through the Bhagavad Gita. And so people relate to that and they get attached to that versus just, you know, the higher level of devotees. You know, we can hear these stories and we can relish them, but unless we have some practicality, the preaching isn't as effective. So we have so many factors here. But it's I mean, ultimately, it's Krishna's grace that we're able to be effective. You know, it's Krishna's mercy on us. Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.